Hey, Chance.
Good morning, everybody.
We are
Who it is. Welcome back.
Good
Back by
morning.
popular demand.
Yeah, so we were just talking about artificial intelligence and its impact on the workforce and so forth for the future. And I was just reading a book on this. Where was I reading this? Oh yeah, so there's one of the speakers that we're having in a few weeks. He's written a book on the future of work and how AI is going to impact the workplace of the future, and that it's not necessarily, it's definitely not a threat of AI taking over your job or a robot taking your job. It's more of working with new advanced technologies to enhance jobs, and so that we'll have to be reskilled on new skill sets to work with AI as part of a work process in our role. So I thought that was, and I see that happening already. So I thought that was somewhat comforting. But yeah, the big problem today is just finding enough people to do work at this point.
Until AI becomes conscious.
Yeah, and then we'll put us all out of a job and put us out on and be like the Matrix, right? We're just
Or the Terminator, they just come for us.
Right.
That's right. Let's get rid of these pest control.
So there's actually an interesting prediction which says that by 2050, so in another less than 3 decades, AI will be on the board of at least one Fortune 500 company.
Oh, that is fascinating. On the board.
Yeah,
Wow,
but
that's
I mean, the criticism of that is that a lot of Fortune 500 boards anyway don't do a lot. So
they get paid well enough.
so that's the counter view to that
Morning,
kind of
Howard.
research.
Hi there, gents.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. It's been hot here. We've been getting a bunch of 100-degree weather.
Well,
It's,
I'm in New Jersey. It's been hot here too.
yeah. Well, it's funny. Everyone complains about it's too cold, and then now everyone's like, it's too hot. We just can't be happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Sam, actually, I think this chat, I'm just noticing, I think our chat is disabled because I can't write to everybody. So I don't know if you can check that on your end just before we get started. I just realized I was trying to, there we go. Okay. All right. Anyone who's already on, if you just want to let us know in the chat that you can actually write in the chat, because I don't want to send you that way and then you try to write us a message and it says chat is disabled. So let us know if you are able to write in the chat before we get started. And I guess we'll get going.
Yeah. So,
thanks, Susan. Oh, San Diego, jealous. Love San Diego. Perfect. It's working. Awesome. Thank you, ladies. All right. Welcome, everyone. This is the People Strategy Forum. We are so excited to have you all here. Welcome. If it's your first time or your 50th time joining us, we're glad that you are here, whether it's live or on one of our other streaming platforms, or if you're watching this later on, listening to the podcast. We appreciate your listening and your energy. And if you've never been to a People Strategy Forum, you're like, I registered for this thing. I don't know what's going on, what's happening. There's a whole panel, a lot going on. Well, we host a weekly webinar. It's completely free and it has so much valuable information. And our goal really is to engage, energize, and elevate your employees and your company. So we do that by having an expert panel with all kinds of different backgrounds in compensation, HR, and entrepreneurship, and so much more. And then we invite a guest speaker to come and lead a topic. So every week is different, and we really want this to be interactive. We don't want you to feel like we're just talking at you. So if there's any questions, comments, feedback, go ahead, write it in the chat, which is now not disabled. So you can write it in there, address it to everyone, not just to the hosts and panelists, and we'll make sure we get those questions answered. But if you're maybe tuning in from a different platform, maybe LinkedIn, Facebook, you can still write the question, and we always make sure we get those answered at the end for you as well. Now, I did mention an expert panel, didn't I? So let me introduce you to everyone here today. Char, I don't know if she'll be joining us, but she usually does. So if she does, I'll introduce her a bit later. But we have Howard, who is a compensation expert, rewards strategist, and has over 3 decades of experience working with different companies across a range of industries. He's helped them implement really successful compensation programs. And we also have Sumit, and Sumit is a people strategist and HR consultant. He's always in the know with the latest and greatest HR practices. He helps companies grow and expand by just going in and creating a roadmap for them. We also have Sam, who is the founder and CEO of CompTeam, and he actually brings us this forum each and every week. So he finds the speakers for us, brings us all together, and he is also a compensation and rewards expert. So like I said, experts all around. And that leads us to our guest speaker, who is Chance Eaton. And if you tune into the forum regularly, he has been here before, so it might be a familiar face for you. And he's great. I love his conversational skills. You're going to love him. Great energy. And a little bit about Chance is that he he actually founded Big Skyway back in 2009, and it's a consulting company. And he's an educator. He helps Main Street businesses expand and grow through consulting and education. So we're very excited to welcome him back. And today's topic is leading self. So I'm wondering what's in store, because that's like a nice general topic and it could go any way. So just relax, take some notes. And again, any questions, write it into the chat. All right, Chance, you're up. Thank you so much for coming back.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Leading self, I like really generic terms. I'm kind of old school. I get really tired of all the hooks and pain points and all the sexy language around titles. The older I get, the older I get. So when we're talking about names, I'm like, how about leading self? Kind of grumpy old man.
Yeah, and of course, it's something that we all need, right? So it's an easy one.
Yeah, it comes anecdotally from just, so it's not research or anything, but just what do you experience of people coming into the office? I mean, that's qualitative research. What kind of themes come up, and it's our job to watch what are those needs. And we've noticed that one of those needs is business. A lot of companies struggle with too much dependency on their shoulders. The company's not valuable. How do we grow? How do we strategize? Operational efficiencies, marketing, finance. Being able to sit down and really interpret your financial statements and make decisions. So that's a strain, that in itself. And then leading your culture. We're all trying to build, it's a religion. You're trying to build a religion in your organization. What are those beliefs and values, and what do we do and how do we do it? And what is our core strategy? So everyone's moving the same direction. That's got a lot of weight to it. The tough one, I think, is leading teams. All that different psychology in the room and different motivations and styles, and trying to make sure people are performing and, being okay with all that responsibility on your shoulders. So that is all a lot of stuff. And leading self is something we don't talk about very often. It's kind of mysterious. It just comes up in our office where someone says, I'm starting to make mistakes. I'm overwhelmed. My relationship is suffering at home. I'm not doing a good job of taking care of me. And if you can't take care of me, how do you take care of your culture and your teams and your business? And so we don't talk about it much, but it's just fundamental. It's critical. And it, more than ever, we have to be thinking holistically of what does leadership mean? And in our opinion, this is part of the leadership bucket.
That's right. And one of the things that of course, Chance, I hear most that is the most important organizations is around trust. And trust is the thought of you think about those things that we trust in. Those are the things that we can rely on to be consistent, that are there, that and that that we, when we go to, that they're ready. It's ready to go. It's operating as we expect it to be operating. And so, and one of the things that I see with individuals is because we're chaotic by nature, we often find ourselves doing sprints here and there, or we're doing these pushes to where we're getting to that element of burnout and so forth. So when I think about leading self, I always think about, how do we get into this marathon in a way where we can continue running at the appropriate pace to where we meet the end goal and are trustworthy overall. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like the idea of trust. Am I credible? Am I competent in my area? Am I reliable? Am I dependent? Do I have that emotional intimacy? Can I sit there with you and understand? And where's my level of self-orientation? How much of this is my ego? You can just see if I can't trust myself, how's that going to play out anywhere else? But you have to be trustworthy. And so there really is this deep dive into our character. I mean, that's part of the formula, isn't it? Our character, our principles. We love the diet pill. We love the quick fix. We love the program of the month. Change, because it requires that we change, is slow work. Change is slow and it's hard. And I think one thing we have to do is get back to our principles, our character. What does it mean to be responsible in your life? What does it mean to have a sense of purpose? Who am I? What do I stand for? What do I fight for? Hell, what would I die for? What's my direction? Because if I don't set my direction, history will, my context will, my mood will, my past. How do I follow through with what I say is important? I always say talk is cheap. Follow through, that's integrity. Building trust, having this collaborative mindset, knowing how to listen, all principle things. And the author I love that's done such a good job with this is Dr. Stephen Covey, who of course has passed away. But I think when people pick up the book, it feels a little cheesy, like, oh, here's the sequences and it's got very clean, simple language, but there's some depth to it. So I think part of this, we've got to figure out character more now than ever in all this chaos. How do I plant my feet and know who I am and what I stand for?
Yeah, one of the things that we just mentioned, Covey, and one of the things that I really liked about his approach is the fact that we wear multiple hats in our lives. We're parents, we're siblings, we're sons and daughters and citizens, and we all have these different roles to play. And to live a balanced life, we need to think about how we are addressing all those important things so that we're ensuring that we're leading ourselves appropriate. And so I thought that was that was when I first read that in his book, and I actually went to the training. I was like, I don't know, 20 years ago or so.
Yeah.
It sticks with you. It's so valuable. It's something that when I go through my goal planning today, and at the beginning of each year and so forth, I'm thinking about, all right, let's look at these different buckets and what do I want to accomplish in each role of my life? And I find that hugely meaningful.
Yeah, there's that leadership again, like how do I, with my family, there's a leadership function there. And I'm using a lot of the same principles, but what is the end in mind with my kiddos? It's that someday they leave the house, maybe not, I kind of like them there, or maybe they don't leave, whatever, but that they become great citizens. That's the end in mind, is that my ex-spouse and I collaboratively work together so they know their strengths, they know where they're weak, they know what they stand for, then go out and pick their own religiosity and politics, like to set them up to be citizens. That's a leadership practice. And I think, and that changes how you parent. If I know that's the end in mind, boy, it sure makes conversations with my ex-spouse and I much easier. So I think it's still leadership, at our churches, our communities, the workplace, self. I think leadership's a bigger topic than we realize.
So Sumit, and just when we're talking about Covey and so forth from my perspective, I'm interested to hear if there's a different perspective that you have from your experience and of course your global experience in India and so forth.
That's an interesting question, Sam, and I'm a huge fan of the 7 Habits as well. And I mean, if I had to really pick one that I like to apply, it's the last one, sharpen the saw. And I think overall as leaders, we fail to implement the last one most of all. So it's very easy to fall into that comfort trap of I've got to this position, I've worked hard all my life. I've got X number of years or decades or lots of experience behind me. There isn't really anything left for me to learn. So I think getting over that mindset is the biggest challenge. And if there's one thing which we've learned from the pandemic, is that whatever you know, whatever you're comfortable with, can change in an instant. So don't get too comfortable out there. Don't get into that who moved my cheese kind of a mentality, and make sure you're sharpening the saw as a leader and encouraging your people to do the same as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that when we think about sharpening the saw, and I think that's a lot of the detriment of many leaders is they feel like that they don't need to do that so much anymore, it's a huge detriment in our current lifestyle, because things in the world are changing so fast. I mean, we were just talking about the trends that we're seeing and AI and so forth, and the call prep here, and it's that trend spotting, I think, is a major role of leadership, understanding how what's changing in my business and what's changing with people management and so forth, and understanding the what we need to do to react. So I think that's a continual effort of sharpening the saw and
Absolutely.
successful.
Absolutely. I mean, a decade ago, who would have thought that Apple would be the largest watchmaker in the world? Or who would have thought that models of car ownership would completely change with companies like Uber and Lyft and so many other folks around? So disruption could come in from any direction. And I mean, the Apple example is something I'm really, really fond of, because they've completely shattered barriers in so many different industries. And today, the entire watchmaking industry actually looks up to them. And 5 years ago or 10 years ago, they were practically, at least 10 years ago, they were like zero, right? They just came up. And now, if you don't have an Apple Watch, it's like you're probably living in some ancient age somewhere.
Howard, I see you're trying to jump in there. Go ahead.
No, I was thinking back, there's been a lot of focus on being your authentic self, and then trying to reconcile that with the workplace environment, because, back in my earlier days, you had your work self and then you had your out of work self. And
Yeah.
Now it's like, bring your whole self to the organization. And does that present unique challenges in terms of what you think about the organization and how the organization has to think about its employees?
Yeah, I love that, Howard. Gallup's done some work around this. In the past, we had a job, that was the expectation, but now people want a life.
Mm-hmm.
They want work to be an extension of their life. And so this holism, and holism is hard for the West, right? In the West, it's about, I like going to the gym and all the posters, I love them. Very Western. Success, achievement, victory, and this holism is a little more Eastern of, are we always doing? What about this moment right now, this beingness in this space, this richness, this core of your consciousness? I mean, I can sit here and observe my body, but I'm observing it, I'm feeling it. I can observe and watch my thoughts, the rumination and the feelings that go with that. So who's doing that observing? I can, watch my past. I'm not my past. And so you get to this weird core that we struggle with. Religion tends to step in and say, we've got an answer for this, but there really is a consciousness there that is really presenting itself. So this Eastern Western philosophy, I think there's a nice balance there. We're just kind of being awakened to something deeper. So yeah, one thing I think is funny about this self thing, because when I think about the trends, that to me is a business topic. We need to be watching what's happening in the environment. But if I'm working on myself, I'm having to change, right? I always like the idea of, here's my comfort zone, right? And as soon as I create change and tension, that's good. We like some of that. When you create tension, there's more awareness, creativity, energy. That's a good thing. We call that eustress. But it needs to go back. And the mind doesn't care if it goes back to where it was or to the new place. we need that piece. And so I don't know if you ever heard of Joe Dispenza. He has this hilarious take on why change is so hard. Have you guys heard of Joe Dispenza before? Okay, Jules has. And
Love Joe. I'm always, his meditations, they just put me out for the day. I'm like, where am I? I'm like in a different dimension right now.
yeah, he's one of those leading people talking about this movement. But when I woke up this morning, and you as well, you get up and you go through this subconscious routine. I shower, I groom, I get my favorite coffee mug, right? That's my mug. And then I take that same route to work. And think about driving. That subconscious, because driving is a very complicated process. I just showed up at work, right? Take that same route, and then I get to work and I have that same routine. Most of my day is just kind of going through those old habits. At the end of the day, I go home that same route, I go to bed, it starts all over again. And we just become products of our environment. We love and we need this familiar past, and we love and need this predictable future. So we're stuck in that. And the bugger of all this is we're secretly hoping something great will happen to us. You know, there we are. You know, if you think about the mind, you hear anywhere from the average person has 30 to 70,000 thoughts per day. Most of those thoughts are the same thoughts that we had yesterday and the day before that, and just go through this, this rhythm, these same thoughts, and have these same emotions, and have these same choices, these same behaviors and experiences, and the same thoughts and emotions again. And you start to memorize this, you start to crystallize how your mind works, your set point. And if you think about the mind, it's built as a survival tool. We're not built for success, we're built for survival. And so in the 70s, Carl Pribram, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, at Stanford, he talked about the brain is simply this pattern recognition, pattern matching, and storage system. And so it's constantly trying to build a familiar baseline so it can make sense of the world, prepare for the future, understand the past, and use as little energy as possible. And so it's wired like that. And every time there's a stimuli that's moderate to extreme, and the brain's looking for match mismatch, it's going to create, a different emotional response. But it's built for that. And if you have this visual of an arrow, right, this arrow, in the back of the arrow with the feathers is the emotions and the thoughts and my story, and that leads to my speech, and that leads to my actions and results. Most people are shooting that arrow in the exact same place every single day. To be able to change that requires some kind of fundamental shift in how we think and how we feel, and changing our story. And the old 70s positive talk is not enough. Remember the old SNL skit? Well, I'm good enough and I'm smart enough, and god darn it, people like me. So
That's right.
consciously I can have that discussion, but subconsciously a much larger program, if it's not in alignment, we wonder why positive talk isn't working. And so here we are, we want predictability, we want familiarity, and we build these baselines, and even the stress and the hormones become addicted to that. That becomes part of our set point. And we even use conditions to reaffirm our addictions. So if I'm angry, and I grew up angry, and I was in an angry household, and that emotion is part of it's like nicotine or caffeine, and I need that anger, and something's going good during the day, I will find a reason to go be angry again so I can be familiar with myself. And think about people in relationships. I'm back with my ex because it just feels right. That's total BS. No, it's familiar. It's just familiar. That's why you're back. So the point here is we can become addicted to a life we don't even like. And that's just the bugger of this. And so as we're trying to change, the mind is fighting us all along. And the secret to all this work is it's your nervous system. If it's not regulated to a level of success or a definition or standard that you want, the body will not let you get there. So it's deep work, and we have to literally learn how to self-regulate and change our nervous system. So that's kind of the funny part of all this. Maybe it's funny for me.
Yeah, but what are the first steps that a person has to take?
Yeah, isn't that the answer? I think part of it, so from my perspective, part of it is I use this analogy of like a mind garden. It's just that farming piece, because the symbolism can hold a lot of data. And so I'm thinking about the crops, right? I have a farming background, right? We'd set that seed, and the crops are those experiences that I want to have in my life. emotionally, relations, spiritually, work. And the weeds are those subconscious sabotaging thoughts, feelings, things that hold us back. And if you think about the mind garden, it's indifferent. Just think about your garden. Does your garden care what it grows? It doesn't care. It doesn't care if it's weeds or crop. It's totally indifferent. So we have to learn how to do this. So I think that's a nice analogy to kind of box this all up. But I think part of the crop piece is principles. I think that's part of it. Getting back to some old school fundamentals, because Covey would argue a principle is a fundamental truth. It's part of our DNA. Getting back to our principles. Two, there's a lot of momentum that just around, what am I wicked smart in? Where are my shoulders the broadest? Where do I grow the fastest, learn the fastest, show the most? So I think all the research and work around talents, especially those companies that turned it into a strength framework, like Gallup's a great tool, right? And they're so cheap. All these companies go off and kind of make their own stuff. Gallup's got so many tools at our disposal. So knowing your wicked talent. So for me, it's connectedness, strategy, learning, input, maximizer, ideation, intellection. These are things that come natural for me. So that's part of using that lens as I go through life. And to me, the third big thing is learn how to meditate. And that's a whole funny conversation, because a lot of people meditating, they're just closing their eyes and thinking. And then they're asking their friend to take a picture of them, so they can put it on their Facebook and say, look how great my life is. Look how calm I am. And, it's an Eastern practice. It's learning to calm. And a lot of people, it's so funny. They say, Chance, I just can't do it. I can't calm my mind. Oh, that's right. You're special. I forgot about that. There's something special about you. I mean, it's like anything else. It takes work and effort, and awareness comes from this act of trying to calm the mind. So those are, in my opinion, those are the big three things.
I really like that, how you're talking about are setting this up in almost like a farm or crop environment. We're thinking of planting that seed and growing that crop and pulling the weeds and so forth. But one thing that comes to my mind as you were talking earlier about the habits and so forth, how people get into habits and they're building, they're creating an infrastructure. And when I think in the context of the crop, as you mentioned, those habits help us create this robustness or this resilience against that big storm or the unexpected freeze, and the resilience that is necessary to be able to deal with those abrupt changes in our life. So I mean, there's how do you typically coach your leaders on how to be more resilient and to ensure that they have this habit in place to where they're going to be able to weather the storm?
Yeah, so let me see if I understand this, Sam. So how do I help folks, to develop resilience, to bend but not break? The kind of the tool I'll go to from a meditation perspective is self-regulation. Like, I don't think stress is the issue, right? Stress is a natural part of our system. And I'll use meditation. I think that's just a tool we need to learn how to use. So if you think about our ancestors, like our history is not that long. I think we've only been farming for like 10,000 years. Organized, humanity is probably, 40, 50,000 years. But let's go back in time, 100,000 years, and Chance is, I'm a cave person. I live in the cave, and I'm doing some hand painting, and I'm, my in-laws, we all look a little too similar, in the cave, and I'm going to go do some hunting. So I've got my club, and I'm wandering around looking for some food and just getting out of there. And I come across a saber-toothed tiger. This beautiful thing happens. My sympathetic nervous system takes over, and my pupils dilate, blood starts moving to my large muscles, and I escape, hopefully, and then I get back to the cave, and I'm in my parasympathetic response. And I'm like, tiger, teeth long, cubs, food, my parasympathetics is bringing me back to a resting and digesting and healing place. And the problem is that sympathetic and parasympathetic part of our autonomic nervous system are supposed to move in sync. But what we're doing is we're driving through life with one foot in the accelerator, one foot in the brake all the time. And we're not getting anywhere. It's tearing our systems apart. And so really what we're doing to help teach self-regulation is creating coherence so our autonomic nervous system gets back into sync. And when I do that, I can self-regulate, because that's the solution. Stress is not the problem. I perceive the world differently. I react and I behave differently. I feel my emotions are different. So to me, that resilience that you're getting at, Sam, that self-regulation is we need to change literally our nervous system and how it regulates so we can get back to a coherent place. So these are tools, like there's so much cool stuff out there. We use heart math. Heart math is our go-to technique. I can stop during a stressful call or a stressful meeting, take 2 minutes out, no one knows I'm doing it, to create a psychophysiological coherent state. You know, I do a lot of mindfulness and other meditation, but that's typically more of a parasympathetic response, it's disassociation. But I don't have the chance to say, I don't like how this meeting's going, everyone. Let's take a 30-minute time out so I can calm and sit in the corner. We need something we can use in real time, and heart math is really good at very quickly changing that coherent state. So that, Sam, that's my kind of go-to, is teaching leaders how to meditate.
Yeah, the importance of meditation, I think that you're mentioning here is key. I mean, and I think the important thing to realize that people are out there realizing when they think of meditation, they often think of one methodology, and you just brought up another one. I know there's a whole host of different ways of mindfulness, and finding your own technique is quite important, right?
Right. And the practice of it. They all hold some things in common. There's something about a focal point. So if I brought in some meditation bells and I just chimed them, your mind just starts to collapse into a singularity. And that's the point. What you're doing is you're building that muscle between the thalamus and the amygdala, saying, you know, you're disrupting the stress response. You're learning to control the mind. Yeah.
So Sumit, you know, not to generalize here, but I know India is a huge source of mindfulness and meditation. What has your experience been with the culture there around that technique?
I think mindfulness, yes, is emerging as, I mean, I think somewhere on the business side, we lost the mindfulness angle a lot, because much of corporate India is actually an offshoot of American and European practices. So therefore, the East-West difference that we're talking of has become diluted a bit. I find mindfulness is being used more, less as a leading self and more of you should be mindful to become more effective. So more of a prescription to employees and saying, attend mindfulness training. It's fine if I send you an email at 11 in the night. You're probably not mindful enough to be able to respond to it. Therefore, the problem is with you. So I think it's just being used a little wrongly. So there is focus on mindfulness, but less on the leading self angle, more on the leading others part of it. But it'll be interesting to see if you've seen or heard anything different in your experiences.
Yeah. So you cut out there for a little bit, Sumit. Yeah, I don't know. I think the benefit of it is, you know, back to self-regulation and just developing a greater total awareness of what's going on, feeling like I'm back in control and I can be resilient and self-regulate. So I think that makes sense. One interesting thing, like, you know, we use heart math because, like you said, Sam, there's like, I mean, we can make up a meditation right now and we can label it with something and go make some money on it. But how heart math works is they're, I'm going to draw something here real quick. So if I take, I don't know if you can see this. If on my y-axis, I have beats per minute, and down here, I just have my heart rate, my ECG, right? And so the heartbeat is doing this kind of stuff, right? It's going up and down. And the heartbeat's actually speeding up and slowing down. And if you start to plot those beats per minute, you get some kind of shape, and that's called heart rate variability. And so the larger this range is, you have more resilience, you have more adaptability, and that range gets smaller and smaller as you age. And so what we're teaching people to do is affect that shape. So when you practice a very simple technique, and we can practice it here, we can talk about it, but when I'm doing that, I'm creating a coherent state. My sympathetic nervous system, which speeds up the heart, where both branches are attached to the heart, speeding up the heart, my parasympathetic slowing it down. I'm literally influencing the shape of my heart rate variability. And then when you get into that kind of state, when you're in that coherent state, all these funny things happen. You release less cortisol, more DHEA, that anti-aging hormone, more immune fighting antibodies. I start to synchronize with my brain waves. In fact, there's research that shows your brain waves will start to synchronize with me as well. Your heart rate variability will synchronize with me. And then the thinking process, more information travels to the brain than the brain does to the heart. And so if I'm sending a really calm signature up to my thalamus, the top of my brainstem, and it's responsible for sensory distribution, it's going to send a nice calming signal to the rest of the mind, and then it's going to come back down to the limbic system for an emotional response. Because when we get stressed, the amygdala pops in, the stress response, and it shuts down everything. So what it's doing is it's disrupting the stress response. It's kind of like the amygdala is the bouncer of the bar. He's sitting there, he's like, you guys come on in, you look safe, I think you're okay. You guys go in, have a good time, have some drinks, have some dance. I don't know about you, I've seen you before, I don't know about you, and they shut the whole show down. So when you're learning how to create a different kind of signature, you're telling the bouncer, hey, it's okay, man, we're safe, there's nothing to worry about. Okay. So anyway, that's kind of the thing that we're showing people how to do, the techniques to in real time influence their psychophysiological coherence.
So when we look at these different methodologies you're talking about, I mean, you've mentioned self-regulation and other aspects of health and so forth, and as part of the solution of leading self. But what are the other pieces? We touched a little bit about management elements and life elements, but what else are that do we need to know around leading self?
I still lay a lot of it on meditation. So if I'm back to that mind garden, what subconscious areas are coming up for me? Abandonment, not good enough, not smart enough, all that stuff, because we're going to use heart math to deal with that stuff. So if I'm setting out new kinds of goals and I'm going to use heart math to help, basically all I'm doing is helping my mind, my subconscious feel comfortable with that new reality. Right? I have to adjust the nervous system. I have to change the baseline. So the meditation is helping me to feel more comfortable with what would it be like to have a really healthy relationship with my spouse, or, to have to lead better with my team. Mm-hmm. But then subconsciously, all the weeds that come up, it's kind of like we've all had bad stuff happen to us, and they're rocks, and we have them in this bag, and we carry this bag around, and that bag is weighting us down. Because you can have a positive thought, but if you're still carrying around that weight, you're not getting anywhere. And so we're using heart math again to go back to deal with those weeds, those subconscious issues. And we're setting a calming signature. So we can't change the past, but I can recontextualize the emotional charge around it. I can take the emotional charge around feeling abandoned, right? Think of all the ways we sabotage our success, from not being good enough. Well, what if I'm too successful? All that baggage that we're carrying, we're still using meditation in a very specific way to calm the stress response, because those are still programs running inside me. So we're using the meditation in a lot of different ways. We need it to be not something just that we use in real time, and not just something to change my nervous system baseline, my architecture, but I'm using it to go deal with the old stuff and the stuff that's coming up, because if my subconscious isn't there, I'm not going to get there. So we're literally reprogramming all the time. And the thing about leading self, you have to be careful. You could create a million topics here, right? And we sell products, and so we have to be careful how much we bundle in there. But another one that I dance around a lot is just the well-being research, again from Gallup.
Yeah.
Having a good work experience. which I'm sorry to say comes down to the team leader. That's still a big part of it. Your relationships. We need to, we're a social species, extrovert or introvert. We still need to spend time with people. Financially, but financial wellness, we enjoy spending money on experiences more than we do stuff. Health, how we eat, how we get good rest, and how we move. We have to have activity. And then community, that spirituality, feeling comfortable in the place that you live in, giving back. So Gallup finds those big 5 areas, and that's something I can track. I'm really big about feedback. You can track over time how you're doing. Heart math, you can track. We have biofeedback equipment. You can see if you're doing it correctly. But I guess, Sam, that would be one more I might add, but we're always careful that we don't add too much where we overwhelm.
Right. Well, one thing you mentioned that I grabbed onto was just the identification of your saboteurs, that baggage that we're carrying around. And so part of the leading self is to understand, what are some of what are those rocks, those big rocks that we're dragging along with us, and to have awareness around that, so that you can start creating a mindset about those things. Is it?
Yeah. So here's some examples. Let me throw some up here. They're kind of funny, and I'll show you how we get into them. Find some here. Yeah. So like, these ideas of deservingness. What if I'm too successful? What if that's not safe? My identity, is that really who I am? I failed in this in the past. Is this really normal? Abandonment. What if I lose? The rejection, jealousy. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't have time for that. It's not my nature. I'm not strong enough for that. I'm not smart enough for that. Maybe I'm fundamentally flawed. And then even the values that we hold. So like, here's a funny example. When I was a kid, so I have this value for work ethic, right? That can be a good and a bad thing, but it can be sabotaging. And so my dad and I are driving to one of our farms, and we're driving out of Union Valley. That's where I'm from. And as we're coming over the hill, I see our neighbor farm, and they had a red Durango, right? Bam. And they're driving to town. They're driving to Glendive. And I'm a kid, and I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, Saturday afternoon, because we work 7 days a week, all year long. How fun. They're probably going to go to Kmart. Oh, that's a big deal. Go to Kmart. And I'm old enough where we had the blue light special. They're probably going to go to Tasty Freeze. Oh, they have the best hamburgers. That's so great. They're probably going to go to a movie. And I thought, what a fun afternoon with the family. And I'm sitting there, and my dad leans over and he taps me on the shoulder. He said, and that's why we're going to own their farm someday. That's why we're going to own that thing. And as you play that out, last year we bought their farm $3 million. Okay. Wow. And so I have a value there that I developed, in those early stages, because we're not in a beta brainwave yet. We're just absorbing everything. This value for work ethic. Value means it's something important to you. And the belief is something you think to be true, even without evidence. So I have this belief that says, oh, when you work hard, you get further in life. Now, is that true? No. I mean, when you're running a business, it's an insult if you feel like if you're working 80 hours a week, that's not something you're proud of, because you haven't built a business that can stand on its own 2 feet. So I have a value for that, and then I have a belief for that. And so that can be sabotaging, because I'm trying to find success, but the only way I think I can get there is hours. I need to put in the time, and I need to earn my way. And by the way, my family's struggling, or other things are in the way. So again, it's just another sabotaging thing. And so those are examples of things. Now, here's how you find them. I think this is hilarious. The mind, the little meditation here is you identify something you want in life. You just pick out some simple goal. Okay, I want to move into middle management. And so I pretend like I go to the movies. So I'm sitting in the movie there. And Sam, by the way, I have to be careful of time. Did we go to 11? Or did
we go to the top of the hour? That's right.
Okay, so I'll go fast. I'm sitting there watching the movie, and I pick a famous character to play me. And I'm watching them play out, them moving through life and moving into a middle management role. I'm watching the movie. That's all I'm doing. And I want all the rich experiences and emotions and tastes and flavors. And I'm watching that. That's great. And then I come back, and I'm going to rewatch the movie this time. But instead of that famous character that I picked, it's me in the movie. And I'm watching, and I start to notice what starts to feel uncomfortable. And I have that list of all these values and beliefs and sabotaging thoughts. What things start to bubble up that makes me feel like, oh, that couldn't happen. And then I replay the movie again, and this time I pretend as if I can hear what everyone else around me is also thinking, all that judgment. So these are ways where you can start to see what are those sabotaging subconscious pieces. I need to identify them. Those are my weeds. And then I need to make sure I'm meditating on that. I'm going backwards in time and disrupting the stress response and recontextualizing that emotional charge. But anyway, it's just funny. I mean, this is what happens when people come in for, like years ago, I did more counseling. For 3 weeks, there's progress. They're moving forward. They're excited. This is the new me. And then they start to go backwards again. And it's always the same stuff when you have that discussion, the deservingness. I failed last time. Who would I really be if that happened, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a common issue. I know that my wife is an educator, and she finds some of those self-sabotaging behaviors, you know, when you start getting that success, when you're like, oh, everything's going good, and then you start worrying. It's like, oh gosh, is this going to last? Or when's the next recession going to hit? Or what about inflation? And then all of a sudden you kind of regress into some old bad habits, right?
Right. Yeah. And what I always do, like when you get to how long success doesn't last, you know, that's the belief. The mind hack here is to go back in time and remember, when is the first time you felt that success won't last? And you try to find in your memory banks that situation. And that's where we go back with heart math, and we revisit that, and we're again adjusting the emotional charge around it. So fundamentally, for us to change, if we don't change the architecture of our nervous system, it's really hard. You know, I just think it's the most fundamental part is we need to learn how to meditate and self-regulate.
You know, part of that when we think about this in the context of business, and I'd love to hear how you advise your clients and Main Street clients and so forth. But when I'm thinking about building something, building a business, you know, myself, you know, I know that I am going to fail someday personally. My health is going, you know, I'm going to get older. My health is going to deteriorate, and eventually I'm going to pass away and so forth. But part of the beauty of building that infrastructure, building something around you, building something that is that it doesn't have to have a life curve like that. You can continue to build on it. So I'm thinking about, okay, myself, you know, when I'm leading myself, I'm thinking about my health, I'm thinking about my mindfulness, I'm thinking about how do I sharpen a saw and continue to build, thinking about the health of the business overall, but it's building this infrastructure, this greater thing that goes beyond myself, the business. And I get a great sense of comfort in that, you know, in building that resilience around me.
Yeah. So you get satisfaction from being able just to make, or you're checking in with yourself. I'm building something that's legacy that can stand the test of time. I'm taking care of my health. You're kind of checking off all those boxes to make you feel
right. And what the
safer.
ultimate goal is, I'm building you know, I want to build a legacy, you know, whether or not it's you know, a way for my company to continue to help those other those firms in need, those companies in need, and so forth, through compensation and talent management.
Yeah.
This is something that I don't have to be a permanent fixture of. If you create this ideology, and you know, if you lead yourself to build this larger infrastructure, something that can survive you and continue on in perpetuity.
Yeah, you can see where leading self and leading business, they cross over really quick. You know, the business issue is the owner's trap, where it's too dependent on you. The company's not valuable.
Right.
I'm worth zero. I mean, if a company bought my company, chance isn't part of it. You know, I'm worth zero, so I have to build a system for that. But when you were talking about, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about this, a little bit of me was like, that's a lot of thinking. Also, and part of that mindfulness is coming back to that internal place of coherence and saying, I'm just going to be, and there's just some strength and resilience that comes with it. Just fuels all those other things a bit.
Well, wonderful conversation and thinking about these things and leading self and how it impacts life and business and family and so forth. So, thankful for bringing all this expertise to us. But I do want to take a pause real quick and acknowledge our sponsor, TMA USA, which is TMA USA is a software platform, and the TMA method itself is a way that we can send out assessments to our people or in our organization to hear more about what their talents are, what their passions are, what they want from their work life in the future. So it's an assessment tool to get to know your people better. And as a consequence of knowing your people better, you're able to create more happy, more higher performing work environments, because we all know if we do things that we love, we often dedicate more of ourselves to more of our passions, and we have higher performance as a result. So, and also I do want to mention our speaker as we're coming up into the next week, this next Wednesday. We have Brad Jeffress is going to talk about how he's developed a culture of a continual improvement in his organization by creating the role of a dream coach. A dream coach is a person that listens to where a person wants to take their career, their life, where they want to go in the future, and helps make that happen. It's almost a way of having that advocate, that personal advocate in your business that your people can go to think about what are the next steps and so forth. Often what we an evolution, I think, of the HR business partner. But anyway, so looking forward to hearing him next week. So back to you, Chance. I mean, you've spoken to us about these tools that you use in your business, and I'd like to learn a little bit more about this, the mindfulness tools and so forth. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we use heart math. We should do a little practice.
Yeah, that'd be
do
cool.
a live meditation.
Yeah.
And so the company's called heartmath.com. And then the research is all held inside their nonprofit called heartmath.org. Lots of peer-reviewed study, lots of independently research studies as well. And so those are places to check out. You can always go to our website, bigskyway.biz, and we bundle these things together in ways that we think help companies and leaders be more effective. But do you want to do a practice? Should we do a little quick meditation?
Yeah, let's go through one. That'd be fun.
So I'm going to speak through the instructions and then we'll do one. And when we do it, if you would like, you can shut your camera off so you don't have one more judgment, one more piece that's distracting you. But I always start with, take some kind of subjective unit of well-being or subjective unit of distress. So we would score ourselves. What's some kind of global subjective unit of well-being right now? 0 to 10, 10 being I feel amazing, 0 means I feel pretty bad. So I'll start with some kind of pre-score. And this step goes like this. I focus my attention in the area of the heart, and I'll walk us through this. And I imagine as if the breath is flowing in and out of the heart or chest area, breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. And so a couple things are going there. Area of the heart, there's our focal point. All meditation has a focal point, whether it's a sound, whether it's the breath, whether it's an interesting piece of my mind, there's the focal point. And when it's in the heart, it's also dropping my awareness from the mental chatter. The mind is built to chatter. And so I'm dropping that awareness. And when my mind does wander, I just begin again. That is mindfulness in of itself. Now, the breath piece, all meditation is a breath piece because the breath is creating more vagal tone. So that parasympathetic response is being activated. And so their research shows 5-second inhale, 5-second exhale. Right. I love meditations. There's like a million different breaths, but this is just in their research because you can track where that coherence comes from. So that's heart focused breathing. And the next part is, and there's lots of different techniques. This one's called the quick coherence. I simply make a sincere attempt to experience a regenerative feeling, such as appreciation or care for someone or something in my life. This is the hard part. And when you watch it on data, this is the trigger. I'm bathing myself in some kind of rich emotional place. And then my mind wanders. Like, did you know squirrels can't find 80% of their nuts? Oh yeah, that's okay. And then I got to bring myself back to my awareness.
80%, huh?
Yeah.
They do all that work and they lose track
That's
of
a lot.
their. Yeah, it's a lot.
There's the distraction. Or, I love McDonald's, right? They have 2 Big Macs for $1 and I don't want to lose money on this deal. Right. So again, that's the distracting mind, but you're learning, you're bringing your awareness back, and the whole active beginning again is part of it. And if I'm doing it correctly, my mind stays here. My breath is a little bit slower than usual. And that renewing feeling, that shape I was showing you, what you see is your heart rate variability starts to go in a very coherent state. And it's so clear that we know there's more DHEA, less cortisol, more immune fighting antibodies, more reaction time. There's all this research around PTSD and brain injury, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so let's do it. If you want, maybe shut your cameras off and I'll let us run for, maybe 2 minutes, just really bathe in it. Is that okay? All right, so go ahead and shut your cameras off if you'd like. So you have one less judgment on you. And I want you on a piece of paper just to score. What's my subjective unit of well-being right now? 0 to 10. Okay. Now I'm going to focus my attention in the area of the heart. And if it helps, you can put your hand over your heart. And imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area, breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. And when your mind wanders, you simply return again. And now the most important part, make a sincere attempt to experience a regenerative feeling, such as appreciation or care for someone or something in your life. And just bathe yourself in it and get deeper and deeper with every breath. I'll let it run for 2 minutes. Keep your attention in the area of the heart. Make sure your breath is slowed down. When your mind wanders, return again. And experience that renewing emotion. And challenge yourself to get deeper and deeper in that renewing, positive, caring emotion. There's nowhere you need to be right now. There's nothing you need to do. Your focus is on appreciation and care. In our last 30 seconds, challenge yourself to get deeper and deeper with that appreciation, care, and renewing emotions. Okay, and that's right at 2 minutes. So start to come on back. And the first thing I have folks do is write down on that piece of paper, what's your current subjective unit of well-being? Okay, pre-score, post-score. Pre-score, post-score. And we consistently find when people do this with us, that score changes, even in a 2-minute space. And there's a million different techniques and ways we can apply this, but that's kind of the baseline. Any comments, feedback? What was that experience like? Jules, what was that like for you?
I feel a lot lighter, actually. That was, because the appreciation part, I don't know, I think gratitude always just makes me feel lighter. It puts me in a different headspace. I feel just very zen, actually.
And that's unique to meditation. Most meditations don't allow for that emotional piece. And this is where we get that sympathetic and parasympathetic working together. I'm like, as an athlete, a lot of athletes do this. Not only am I calm and relaxed and ready to move, I'm also ready to throw that ball or swing that bat. Yeah. How about for you, Howard? What was that like?
Just a feeling of calmness that came over me, you all day, you're busy thinking about what you have to do, where you have to go. And then it's almost like, just that, all let go.
Yeah, and that's 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sumit, how was that like for you?
It was very relaxing. It's almost the end of the day here. So I think it just helped me kind of empty my head of various thoughts and leftover ideas from the day.
Yeah, I like that. It sets you up for peak performance. How about you, Sam?
Well, of course, I mean, it just gives you that sense of peace, right? You're cutting off a layer of that stress, and you're feeling good about it. But the technique that you use, I really appreciate is when we're, I feel like, hey, I'm doing this for myself. I'm doing this to where I can calm myself down. But then when you think about, hey, what are you thankful for, and so forth, it's almost like you're, when you have that mindset, you're saying, well, I'm really thankful that, Chance is here giving, teaching us all how to do this. I mean, it's almost like it's almost like you're giving something as a gift as well. So it's like you're taking in yourself, and that mindfulness of what are you thankful for is almost like a gift. And it makes you feel like you're very, very balanced. I think that's a great approach.
And then when you go to lead the business and strategize and lead my team and our culture and all these things, and leading my family and all these things, I'm coming from a different place. I'm fuller, and we deserve that. And at the end of the day, happiness and well-being isn't something that happens to us. It's a skill.
Mhm.
And what's so cool about this day and age, we have so much research and tools at our disposal, and just applying them, putting them into practice. So anyway, that's something we found to be very helpful for clients.
Yeah. So to our listeners, Chance, I mean, as we're wrapping up here really soon in the next minute or so, how can our listeners learn more about you and contact you and so forth?
Yep, bigskyway.biz, B-I-Z, bigskyway.biz. And we have on their upcoming events. We have some free micro workshops, I think next week. Ms. Jenny Rue should have those up on the site. And so there's always stuff. That's the best way to come get in touch with us. There's a contact page. I don't use social media much, but I think LinkedIn, you could probably look for Chance. He's probably in there somewhere. You can contact me that way. Yep.
Great. Well, always a pleasure. It's such a
Yeah.
huge, impactful discussion today. And so I hope a lot of people benefit from this. And as they listen into what the techniques and skills that you brought to us today. It was great. Thank you so much. Chance.
Thank you, Sam, Sumit, Jules, Howard. I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
All right.
Chance,
Thank
for having
you.
back.
Have a nice day ahead.
Yes.
All right.
Bye.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye all.
Bye, everyone.